A question a lot of our customers ask is why create a custom VM template or an Amazon machine image? And we summarize the answer in 3 points. So if you're working at an organization where security is a concern, you might want to create a standard operating environment because you can go through the CIS or Essential 8 hardening standards, for example, on your own. So you can make your own determination on how you want to configure your system to meet those standards. In addition, you can install any security and monitoring tools that your organization uses. So now, any VM that you create in the future from that image will have that configuration baked into it, which is the second benefit, consistency. Spinning up and provisioning each VM separately obviously has several drawbacks, like risking having different package versions between VMs or manually selecting the wrong packages or installer options. Instead, leveraging a golden image gives you a remarkable level of consistency. And if you're going to be creating a lot of instances of virtual machines and be doing it fairly regularly, you don't want to waste time on repetitive tasks. This brings up the third point, which is efficiency. So baking everything in a golden image will save you heaps of time. Ansible is obviously at the heart of the automation process to create that SOE. With Ansible, there are two ways to talk to infrastructure components. So if we take VMware, for example, we can use Ansible modules. There are heaps of modules for VMware, which we can explore in the module index. Here are some examples from the documentation. So a lot of modules that we can explore. For example, this one is how to create a virtual machine from a template. And in the documentation, the first thing you'll see is the synopsis. So the brief description of how the module works and the parameters the module expects. And finally, you do get some examples like how to create a virtual machine from a template, which is very relevant to today's example and demo. But if you're looking for modules that are certified and supported by Red Hat, then the Ansible Automation Hub is the way to go. So if we go ahead and search for VMware modules within the Ansible Automation Hub, you get the list of collections that are certified and supported by Red Hat. And if for any reason we can't find a module that does exactly what we want, we can always use the vCenter REST APIs and execute those APIs using the Ansible URI module. It's worth mentioning that all the concepts we covered today don't only apply to VMware, but also to a wide spectrum of vendors and partners, including Amazon, Microsoft, and Google, of course. The demo we chose today is based on the AWS infrastructure. Now let's explore the workflow we built for the demo, and we usually see our customers implement something very similar to this. The workflow starts with notifying and logging that it has started. This can be done using the AWS Simple Notification Service, as we'll see in the demo, or it could be a message to a Slack channel, Kafka topic, or even an update to a ServiceNow ticket. The next step is to provision an EC2 instance on AWS and then start customizing that, like installing a web server and our applications on top of that, and maybe some monitoring tools. And then we harden this instance with our standard of choice. The demo we are going to use the CIS standards. We are now ready to freeze our EC2 instance and build our golden AMI out of that. And then schedule a job to clean up resources like terminate the EC2 instance and perhaps deregister the previous golden AMI. And finally notify the concerned teams that the workflow has concluded. There can be various triggers for this workflow, like a webhook in a GitHub repo or a step in a Jenkins pipeline, maybe even a Lambda function, a ticket in ServiceNow, or a cron job that can trigger the execution of this workflow on a regular basis. All right, now it's time to run the demo. So if I go to my Ansible controller and launch my workflow, as I said, the first step will be sending an SMS notification via the SNS service, which is what we see here. And then the process will go ahead and provision an EC2 instance on AWS. So here is a simplified play for launching the EC2 instance. What you see here is a task in the playbook. Its name is launch EC2 instance. It uses a module called EC2_instance and passes a few parameters to that module, like the instance name, the type of the instance, and the ID of the AMI we're going to create the instance from. Okay, so the workflow has created the EC2 instance successfully, and if I go to my dashboard, I can indeed see my instance created and running, and it is now installing the IIS server on top of that EC2 instance, which is a Windows machine. You can obviously follow the progress of that task, and once it's done, I can try to access the IIS server it just installed. There we go, we have an IIS server installed on AWS, on my EC2 instance running on AWS. Now I can go back to my workflow. And what it's doing now is hardening the Windows Server based on the CIS standards. So in this step, we are hardening the Windows Server according to the CIS benchmarks from the Center of Internet Security. The CIS benchmarks are divided into several sections, and the first section provides recommendations around account policies. The first one is to set the password history to 24 or more passwords. Ansible makes it very easy to transform this recommendation into a play. Here I use a module called the Win Security Policy and pass the appropriate parameters. And the next recommendation is to set the maximum password age to less than 365 days. And you get the idea now. It is very simple to transform all of these recommendations into a playbook. Let's go back to our workflow, which is now building the golden AMI. Now, creating that golden AMI does take a few minutes, and if I go to my AWS account and go to my AMI dashboard, I will find a new golden AMI created today. And the final step of the workflow is to notify us that the workflow has completed successfully, which is again an email notification that I get through the SNS service.